In the 21st century, I find it to be a fair question on if we are really acting, behaving, and if we are in general a republic. A republic generally means the power is with the citizens. Those citizens then select representatives to do their bidding. Now, what happens when the representatives are not doing the bidding of the citizens? Instead, they're doing the bidding of businesses. To give everything some background, I do think it's important for us to discuss and touch on the founding of this country, to have a clear understanding of what our founding fathers were running away from. Came from a society that was a monarch, okay? So it was not very fair or equal to those putting in a lot of work. You were either born into royalty, born into being able to have some land so that you were able to grow some food or provide meat or provide dairy. And if you weren't doing that, your option was to be a peasant or to be a knight. Those were the options. So, given those options, it makes perfect sense that our founding fathers had every intention to create a country where there would be checks and balances, where there would be fairness, where there would be civil liberties, and where we would form and move as a republic.
I think it is important to state that even though it was considered important, does not necessarily mean that is what happened.
From 1877 to the 1950s, African Americans experienced a period of time known as the Jim Crow era.
Throughout the Jim Crow era, African Americans were faced with injustices such as lynchings, not being able to eat where they wanted to, not being able to sit where they wanted to, um, police corruption, and this was all justified by the Supreme Court, and they considered it separate but equal. And we dealt with this for a few decades. And these are examples of some of the caricatures you would see during the Jim Crow era. Um, yeah.
And all of this was deemed legal by the US Supreme Court. They called this separate but equal. In 1941, Franklin D. Roosevelt declared an executive order to have Japanese Americans removed from their homes and considered them aliens. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December of 1941. Executive order. This took place from 1941 into 1943. By 1944, they started to realize that an invasion was unlikely to happen and started to allow some of these people to leave. Let's keep in mind that almost 35,000 Japanese Americans left these camps in 1944, but thousands of others remained. In 2021, the pharmaceutical industry spent a staggering $263 billion to protect the prices on their medications and prescriptions. They did this through lobbying, a process used by businesses and people in general to to basically convince and persuade government officials, specifically congressmen, to push through bills and laws that benefit them. We do see oftentimes laws and bills being pushed through that do not help the people. This can be said for the pharmaceutical industry, this can be said for the health industry as a whole, and this can also be said about the real estate industry. Ironic. I find it ironic. And I find it a pattern in the US to shift things from one demonization to another, but claiming it to be equal, claiming it to be protection. It went from the Japanese Americans to the African Americans, which today it's just us as a people. It's the businesses versus the people. I find it perplexing and concerning that if we are a republic as we've claimed to be, how this can happen. How do we have representatives more interested in pushing through the concerns of businesses than protecting the people. In my opinion, the reason that we have representatives who don't always have the best interests of the people definitely has a lot to do with the money that is tied to this industry of politics. The fact that there's so much money tied in to this business of being for the people, I think it makes it very easy for it to become corrupt. When you're being persuaded with large gifts and large donations, I can see how you may feel obligated to make good on those investments that people are putting into you.
To tie all my points in together, I do not think that America is a true republic, and I find that evident through the examples that I've led with as far as the Jim Crow era, the Japanese Americans being ripped from their homes and placed
and
into
our
internment
pharmaceutical
camps,
companies and real
and
estate companies.
companies and the companies in general being before these companies being placed before the citizens. In the 21st century, we see it today that these lobbyists are able to convince filmmakers to pass laws that are not in our best interest. And for that reason, I do not think that we're a republic. And I hope that that's something that we can make strides to change here soon.